Letitia James is most definitely in danger of being disbarred. You know, Elise Stefanik's all over this one. She came out with a 64-page letter yesterday. We talked about this, in which she was going to the New York Committee on Professional Standards and saying, hey, wait a second, what is this lady doing given what the Court of Appeals? Elise has made similar commentary before, just several months ago. She said something similar, but now sending that letter, as I said, to the Committee on Professional Standards, thereby putting Letitia James in jeopardy of being disbarred, which she should be. I mean, keep in mind, she absolutely should be. And now you have the Court of Appeals saying, hey, maybe we need to do something about this. Maybe we actually need to try and rein in a woman like Letitia. I want to just jog your memory here. Remember what she was saying, how she was going to go after everything? It turned out the total bill came to $489 million. Originally, I think she asked for $250. And then she came back with $3-something. But, Judge Arthur Engelgren, however you say his name, he's like, wait a second, no, we can do even better than that. How about $489 million? The whole thing was so ridiculous.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
And the judge was all too happy to do that, right? Arthur, who could get disbarred as well. That's the next step for Elise. I bet you anything she's going to go after him as well, because really you've got some very aggressive, very rabid kinds of people here. I want to share with you some of the reaction that we are getting here from the appellate court, with one judge calling the former president's penalty troubling and wondering if the state's policy of private business transactions was deterrence or mission creep. A 5-judge panel in the state's Intermediate Appeals Court in Manhattan was quizzing the lawyers representing Donald Trump as well as the lawyers representing Letitia James just the other day. And they're saying, wait a second, this is rather concerning. This is rather concerning because, you see, you're putting in place this idea that we can expand this statute that's never been expanded in this kind of way before. And you have no victims. You have no complaints even. And if you have two sophisticated parties engaging in a transaction, in this case, Deutsche Bank, saying, yeah, Trump, you want this loan. What's your collateral? He says, I got Mar-a-Lago. I got my penthouse, right? The Trump Tower. And they say, okay. And then now you get Letitia James saying, no, because we don't actually think Trump Tower is worth that or Mar-a-Lago is worth that. I'm going to jump in and fine you nearly $500 million. I mean, it really and truly doesn't make sense. And it reminds me, I spent 6 weeks on the ground down in North Carolina covering the Duke lacrosse. Remember that case with that really rabid prosecutor? And obviously these are very, very different cases, but it reminds me of a very similar situation because Letitia James was out for political blood. I mean, this says it all. This is sort of her campaign speech. She campaigned on one thing and one thing only.
I've taken on powerful interests like developers. I've taken on legislators. I've taken on landlords. I've taken on powerful interests in the city of New York because I believe in a good fight. And right now, what we need is someone who understands that you should not be afraid, not be fearful of Donald Trump. We should take him down. We should sue him all the way to bankruptcy. We should investigate his business interests. We should investigate his business holdings. We should investigate whether or not why he was once in debt and now in a position to purchase all of this property. We can do that because I've been trained to do that, and I will do that at the same time knowing the Office of Attorney General and its powers and its responsibilities and its duties. My name is Letitia James, and I plan on being the next Attorney General of the state of New York. God bless you and thank you.
And then she became Attorney General, and then she went after Trump from the very beginning, to which now the appellate court is saying this doesn't make any sense. This is Judge Friedman saying it hardly seems that justifies bringing an action, when she said, oh, well, you could have a situation where consumers are somehow hurt by this. I don't really know how consumers are hurt by Deutsche Bank and Trump. She's trying to say that Trump was like the subprime loans of 2008. And she's pointing to Lehman Brothers and trying to use that as an explanation as to why she could bring forward this case. I mean, it really, really doesn't even make any sense. In other words, she's trying to say that they didn't, have the ability to take out those kind of loans, and therefore it hurt Lehman Brothers and hurt the whole banking system. And if Trump doesn't have the proper collateral on his loans, then it's going to hurt Deutsche Bank and therefore the entire banking system. To which the judge said, nah, you don't have, quote, anything like that here. You got it, girl? You don't have anything like that there. So why would you be doing this other than, well, political reasons? This is Judge John Higgett, who asked the appeals court whether or not they should be considering guardrails to prevent James from, quote, going into an area that wasn't intended for her jurisdiction. And then another judge said, quote, the immense penalty in this case is troubling. You think? $500 million, you're trying to put this guy out of New York, you're trying to bankrupt him, you're trying to actually make life absolutely miserable. Why the heck would anybody ever want to go to New York and do business in New York? There has to be some law and order. Some of you who watch this program may have seen this clip. I want to show it again anyway because it's actually fantastic. You see the attorney here, Judith Vale. She's representing Letitia James for the state. And before she can even get a couple of words out of her mouth, they shut her off.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Well, several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Well,
You
I'll
heard,
take that
right?
first, Your Honor.
She's saying, let me add to this. Literally, no impact on the public. Like, your job is to protect the public, but what are you doing? You're not protecting the public. You're just trying to go after one Donald Trump. The reason this is important, guys, is because you saw the news today with Jackie Boyd, Jack Smith, 165 pages being unsealed. Judge Shunkin in D.C. saying, okay, we're going to put this forth. And I'm sorry, I cover this stuff for a living. Right? This is what I do day in and day out. I'm confused. It's like, wait a second, haven't we heard this already? Which case is this? The public is exhausted by this, but they're thinking that they can put this out there, and in doing so, they will somehow drive the nail in his coffin. We're going to get to that story in just a moment, but I think it's rather telling, right? Because here's a biggie, and this one's going to get thrown out. This one's going to get overturned, and I suspect Letitia James is going to have her career threatened, as it should be. Because how is there any fairness in this? Her job is to be out there protecting the public, and she thinks protecting the public is going after Donald Trump because of a private transaction that he made between himself and Deutsche Bank. Because she doesn't agree with the valuation of Mar-a-Lago. I'm sorry, since when did this judge and Letitia James become property value experts? Don't you think that the bank who's actually lending the money would actually know a thing or two about that and maybe be just a little bit better at gauging it? I mean, Trump made that point himself. Remember, he was furious, as he should be. He's furious right now about the Jack Smith thing. And again, we're going to get to this. But let's take a walk down memory lane. Remember, when this news came out, he went right outside Mar-a-Lago and said this.
New York State judge just ruled, and he's crooked as you can get, And a lot of people expected something like this, but not for the amount. But this is a very dishonest man. This is a man that's been overturned already on this case 4 times. But a crooked New York State judge just ruled that I have to pay a fine of $355 million for having built a perfect company. Great cash, great buildings, great everything. It affects New York. It's mostly talking about New York, where we have a totally corrupt attorney general. She campaigned on the fact that I will get Trump, I will get Trump. Everybody's seen it, Letitia James. They've all seen it. Well, we'll be appealing, but more important than that, this is Russia, this is China, this is the same game. All comes out of the DOJ, it all comes out of Biden. It's a witch hunt against his political opponent, the likes of which our country has never seen before. You see it in third world countries, banana republics, but you don't see it here.
You see, it's the same thing. And if this woman, Letitia James, is not stopped, who's to prevent somebody from doing the exact same thing again with a political opponent that you do not like? And again, it goes back to the Jack Smith and the DOJ stuff, which we'll get to. But let me just point out, Elise, she's not someone you want to mess with, okay? I'm going to give you that word of advice, Letitia James. She is one smart cookie. She took down the woman who was the president of Harvard University, Claudine Gay, and the woman who was president of MIT, and the woman who was president of UPenn. I mean, it's like one after another. Boom, 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 gone because of her excellent questioning on Capitol Hill. And now with her 64-page letter, she's saying, you know, this is not really right. This is not really fair. And she's positively right. New York Attorney General Letitia James violated the rules of professional conduct by conducting a biased investigation and prosecution of President Trump and by attacking President Trump through extrajudicial statements during a trial. In just the first 5 weeks of the trial that began in October 2023, before I stopped counting, Ms. James made over 50 highly inappropriate and prejudicial comments on social media. Remember this one? You know, too male, too pale, that whole thing. Oh, I think we got it. I think we got it with any luck. It's important to remember because you're going to keep this in context. This was flat out wrong.
He's called me venomous. We will fight back to your attempt to bring Trumpism to New York City. He's called me disgraceful. Of the fact that they stole the Supreme Court seat. An illegitimate president and an illegitimate member of the United States Supreme Court. He's called me radical. Listen, yes. We know he's crazy. Yes. We know he doesn't have a sound mind. Yes. We know he's out of control. Yeah. We know he's losing it. Yeah. We know his days are numbered and we will come together. He's called me a racist. We've got to stand up to an administration which is too male, too pale, and too stale.
All right. Chickens are coming home to roost here. Letitia, you're in a lot of trouble. And you should be. It is not acceptable that an AG is going to go out and say, okay, I got to target. This is a misuse, frankly, of taxpayer dollars in the city of New York. It threatens the economic well-being of a city like New York. And it threatens really just our basic sense of fairness and justice.